This is Entertainment for Review, and I'm going to be continuing the Friday the 13th review series with 1993's Jason Goes to Hell, The Final Friday. After a very good run in the 80s, having movies come out in all but 2 years, Jason makes his first and only appearance in the 90s with Jason Goes to Hell. This is also the first installment of the movie series that is not under the Friday the 13th banner. It's not called Friday the 13th Part 9, it's just Jason Goes to Hell, The Final Friday. And that's because this movie switched to a new production studio. The first 8 movies were all made under Paramount Studios, and this movie switches to New Line Cinema. However, it's not the first time that they've tried to use the final branding. Friday the 13th Part 4 was billed as the final chapter, and this one is billed as the Final Friday. And just like before, this is not the final installment. So let's take a look at Jason Goes to Hell, The Final Friday. Now, this movie starts off with a lone young woman arriving at Crystal Lake. She goes into a cabin and decides to take a bath. But just as she's about to get into a tub, the power goes out. When she goes to investigate, she's attacked by Jason out in the hallway and manages to get away. So right away here, we see that Jason is back, he's alive. Unlike in the previous movies, we don't get any explanation as to how he was revived or how he made his way back to Crystal Lake. Jason pursues the woman out into the woods where she leads him into a trap set by the FBI. The woman was Agent Marcus. She was used as bait to set a trap because Jason can't resist a young woman around his lake. And they shoot Jason with a hail of gunfire, and then use some explosives to blow him up. So we see Jason killed within the first few minutes of the movie, or is he, as his head lands on the ground next to his still beating heart. We then see Creighton Duke off in the woods observing all this, and it's clear he doesn't believe that Jason's done for. It's worth noting that Jason's appearance was a little bit rougher in this movie. This is the third movie in which Kane Hodder portrays Jason, and we see his head is a lot more deformed than it's been in several movies, possibly more than ever before, and he has some long strands of sparse hair. His mask looks old and falling apart, and it looks like it's embedded into his face. He's making some unusual sound effects for Jason. He's making noises when he attacks the woman, even more when he's being attacked by the FBI. Not a fan of this. I like when Jason's just the silent killer. After being blown up, Jason's remains are taken to a federal morgue. He's being examined by the coroner until he notices Jason's heart and sees it's still beating and becomes hypnotized by it to the point that he starts eating it. And then we see orbs of light going from Jason's body parts into this man, as Jason apparently now has the ability to possess other bodies as he takes over his. Another coroner comes in and is taking the opportunity to insult Jason because he believes him to be dead. Jason, in the body of Phil the coroner, then kills the other coroner, and he does appear to now be imbued with Jason's strength. And as he leaves the room, we see Jason's true form reflected in the mirror. Outside, he's looking to make an exit until the two agents guarding the door say that they're the ones who got Jason, and so he turns around and kills both of them. We don't see it, but we see their dead bodies in the next scene. Jason's no longer a local boy. He's picked up national news as the story of what happens on the morgue is picked up on a major news story. They then go to the bounty hunter Creighton Duke, who says that Jason is not dead. It doesn't matter that his physical body was destroyed, as he can just grab another and wear it as a meat suit. He says he's the only one who knows how to truly destroy Jason permanently, and he'll do it for $500,000. And the news station does decide to pay him. They say they'll pay him his fee if he can prove that Jason is still alive and prove that he's able to kill him permanently. The movie really tries to bring some big changes to Jason, and I'm not too big a fan of him. Jason's been killed and brought back multiple times, but I don't really like this new ability to possess other bodies. Jason was already a badass as it was. He really doesn't need to be enhanced with new powers. The news station also notes that there have been 5 more killings in the style of Jason, and they are all in a line heading back towards Crystal Lake. We then go to a diner that is trying to capitalize off Jason's newfound national fame by theming their menu after him, including hockey mask-shaped burger patties. Creighton Bell has come here to talk to one of the waitresses, Diana. He tells her that Jason's coming for her and he needs her help to stop him. She refuses, but he persists until the sheriff arrests him for harassing her. Then at the counter, she talks to Steven, who's a current ex-boyfriend of her daughter. She said if he wants to save their relationship, there's something important she needs to tell him, and she tells him to come to her house at 11 p.m. We then see him driving along later that night, and he picks up 3 hitchhikers who has to be dropped off at Camp Crystal Lake, where they'll be camping out for the night. These 3 are Alexis, Deborah, and Luke. After the 3 go for a swim, Deborah and Luke go into their tent to do what teens do in these movies, and Alexis says she's going to sleep out under the stars. Jason, in the body of the coroner, has made it back to Crystal Lake, and he first goes after Alexis, who's alone outside, and he kills her with a scalpel. In my opinion, they spend a little too much time on the scene with Deborah and Luke, but Jason does move in for the kill. He finds an old road sign and impales Deborah through the chest while her and Luke are sleeping together, and then he kills Luke, but we don't see that on screen. Jason then goes to the diner where he watches Diana come out. She goes over and feeds the dog some scraps of food, and then she's startled by Deputy Josh. He's He's waiting outside when his girlfriend Edna pulls up, and they're getting ready to leave. As Edna's getting back into the car, Jason comes up behind her and slams the car door on her head, killing her. He then takes Deputy Josh back to the Voorhees house, a new location we've never seen in any of the other movies. He has Deputy Josh restrained on a table and for some reason has removed most of his clothing. He then proceeds to shave the hair off of his face. Jason then body swaps from Phil the coroner to Deputy Josh. Diana goes back to her house and she gets a call from her daughter, who tells her that she has a new boyfriend who, unbeknownst to the mother, is the host of the show American Case File that's paying Creighton Duke to hunt down Jason. While they're on the phone, Jason, now in the form of Deputy Josh, enters the room and attacks Diana. She then realizes who it really is because she sees the reflection in the mirror and sees Jason's form. Manages to get a pistol out of the drawer beside her and shoots him in the head. Although because he's now imbued with the powers of Jason, this only keeps him down for a few seconds. He resumes his attack and seems to be trying to transfer to her body, as he has a black snake-like thing coming out of his mouth trying to get to hers. Steven enters and manages to get Deputy Josh off Diana, only to get attacked himself. Meanwhile, Diana's daughter Jessica, after getting disconnected, calls the sheriff. Josh Jason continues his attack and grabs a knife from a butcher block and throws it through the back of Diana. He then resumes his attack on Steven, who ducks. When Jason sees his reflection in the mirror, he has a momentary pause, giving Steven time to stab him through the back with a fire poker and then throw him out the window. Diana then tells Steven he needs to protect Jessica and the baby, and then she dies. Moments later, the sheriff enters and sees Diana dead. Steven goes over, but Josh Jason has disappeared from below, and the sheriff arrests Steven for the murder of Diana. At the police station, another deputy tells Steven he's going to try to help get it straightened out. Diana's daughter Jessica and her daughter Stephanie arrive at the house, where they find Vicky trying to clean up the mess before she got there. She asks about Steven, and Vicky tells her what's going on, and then they go to the police station. They see Steven on the way in as he's being taken to a holding cell, and she goes to talk to the sheriff. She gives her baby to Vicky to watch while she's doing this. Steven is in his cell, and Creighton Duke is in the cell next door. Now, Creighton tells Steven he has information that would help him stop Jason, but it comes at a cost. And that cost is not money. He apparently gets his jollies by breaking people's fingers in exchange for information. And that's what he does. He breaks 2 of Steven's fingers and gives him the information. He says that the bodies Jason is jumping into can only last him temporarily, and that he needs to be reborn into his own permanent body again. To do this, he must take over the body of someone who shares his bloodline. He then says that Diana was Jason's sister. Now, in the original movie, Mrs. Voorhees said Jason was her only child, so we can assume that she's a half-sister through Jason's father. He tells him that only someone of Jason's bloodline can either bring him back or destroy him permanently. He tells him he needs to go to the Voorhees house to look for evidence. Steven calls Officer Randy over, saying that Creighton broke his fingers. When he gets too close, Steven grabs him and takes his gun. He forces him to let him out, and he puts the officer in the cell and locks him there and leaves. He goes to the diner where Vicky had taken the baby. He sees the baby in the back for the first time, and is discovered by Ward. After a moment's hesitation, Ward gives him his keys and tells him he can use his car. Steven goes to the old Voorhees house and begins looking around. The place is pretty run down. On a table he finds a book which is the Necronomicon from the Evil Dead series. Now this could just be an Easter egg to that series, or it could be to indicate that Jason draws his power from this source. He hears someone coming and goes in the closet where he falls through the floor. Robert, Jessica's boyfriend and host of American Case Files, comes in and reveals that he had stolen Diana's body from the morgue and stashed it in the house, so that they can do a special report on the house and discover the body. While he's talking to somebody on the phone about this, Josh Jason bursts into the room and holds him down, and he transfers Jason's soul into his body. After this, Josh's body just begins to melt and fall apart. In the closet, Diana's body had fallen through the hole where Steven had fallen through the floor. Robert Jason then gets up and marches out of the room. He heads straight towards Jessica and attacks her at her house. Steven follows and manages to get her out, and then runs over Robert once and then backs over him for good measure, and then takes off with Jessica. They stop down the road and Steven tries to explain what's been going on. However, Jessica isn't going for it, and when she gets the opportunity, she kicks him out of the car and takes off. She goes to the police station and tells them where she's left him. And then Randy, the officer that he locked in the cell, comes to arrest him. They get into a fight, but it seems like more of a fight between friends than a fight between a cop and someone he's trying to arrest. When he finds out Jessica's at the police station, he asks to be arrested. Before they get to the station, Robert Jason arrives and goes on a rampage, killing multiple police officers to get to Jessica. Steven arrives and manages to knock out Randy and get himself free, and shoots Robert Jason multiple times with Randy's gun. Randy and Jessica then make an exit as more officers arrive on the scene. Jason kills 2 more by cracking their heads together, and then one runs down the hall and gets knocked out by Creighton Duke, which allows him to escape. They then head over to Joy B's diner to get the baby, but the owners, thinking Steven is a felon, don't want to let them in. They tell Ward to go get the police. Outside, Robert Jason is already making his way over, and he kills Ward first outside, then busts into the diner where a lot happens. Jason throws a diner patron through the counter. Steven starts shooting Robert Jason again. Vicky grabs a shotgun. She shoots Robert Jason, but also hits the diner patron. Jessica and Steven go to the back looking for the baby, and Jessica finds instead a note from Creighton Duke saying that he has the baby. Robert Jason kills Shelby by driving his head into the deep fryer and then punches in Joey's face. He then grabs Jessica again and is being fought off by both Vicky and Steven. Vicky shoots him again with the shotgun, and then when that's out of ammo, grabs a metal rod and drives it through him. He then grabs Vicky and pulls her onto the metal spike as well, and then crushes her head. Steven starts looking for help. Jessica runs out and leaves in a truck, and then Steven sees the note from Creighton Duke. And then he spots a machete on the wall. And you gotta have that machete. It is the signature signature weapon of this series. Creighton Duke notes that he took the baby to the Voorhees house and told Jessica to come alone. She does arrive alone at the Voorhees house and then goes in. Creighton does give her back the baby, but tells her he needs her help to destroy Jason. She doesn't believe him, but then he throws her a dagger, and when she catches it, I guess she has the power, and it transforms into a magical Jason-slaying knife.
I do.
Creighton tells her they can't trust anybody, as Jason could have jumped into any body. And at the diner, we do see that there is a cop walking through the diner seeing all the bodies, and then they come across Robert, and Jason does jump into that body, but we don't see who it is. People do show up at the Voorhees house, first the sheriff, and Creighton says not to trust him, but Creighton falls through a trap door in the floor and gets a metal rod through his leg. Jessica and the sheriff get into a bit of a struggle, and Randy arrives and tells the sheriff to step away. Jessica ends up stabbing the sheriff. It turns out, however, that Jason was in Randy, and he goes over and tries to grab the baby. It is worth noting that being in Randy is the first time that Jason attempted to speak through somebody and uses their own voice to disguise himself. He tries to transfer his soul into the baby, but Steven runs in and cuts his throat with a machete. Out of this wound crawls a demonic manifestation of Jason's evil, which has been dubbed Hell Baby Jason, and begins crawling around the room, and they manage to throw it down the hatch door. They help Duke get out of the basement, but trapping this in the basement was the worst thing because that's where Diana's body was. And Duke does say it doesn't have to be a living Voorhees woman, so Hell Baby Jason does crawl inside of Diana, and moments later, Jason bursts through the floor, now fully reformed. Back in the same body, same clothes, same mask he was in at the beginning of the movie, which seems a little odd. He at least could have freshened himself up a little bit. Jessica and Steven try to get to the dagger while Creighton tries to slow Jason down. Jason then kills Creighton by wrapping him in a bear hug and breaking his back. As Jessica's trying to get the dagger, it falls through the floor. Jason grabs her, and then Steven tackles Jason through the front window. He battles Jason outside, which gives Jessica time to go to the basement and retrieve the dagger. As Jason's about to kill Steven, Jessica runs up and stabs him through the heart with the dagger. Orbs of energy immediately begin becoming out of Jason's chest. Steven punches Jason in the mask several times, and then Jessica kicks the knife further in. More orbs come out, and a light shines down on Jason, and then demonic hands come up out of the ground and begin trying to drag him down to hell. They start to pull Steven as well, and Jason jumps back out of the ground and tries to pull Steven along, but the hands pull Jason back down, and Jessica manages to pull Steven free. Jason is completely submerged, and Steven, Jessica, and the baby leave. And then, as is tradition for these movies, we do get a bit of a surprise ending. We see Jason's mask slowly being unearthed by wind, and then a dog comes up and scratches at it, and then Freddy Krueger's arm lurches out of the ground and grabs the mask and pulls it under. And we close the movie with Freddy's laugh. So we get our first tease for Freddy vs. Jason. Sadly, it would take a full decade to see this fulfilled. We get the tease in 1993, and Freddy vs. Jason doesn't come out until 2003. So Jason Goes to Hell, as we said, has a new director and a whole new production company, and they try to go an extremely different direction than the previous movies in this franchise. For me, I feel like they just tried to do too much. I don't like that we get no explanation as to how Jason returned in this movie, and then they destroy his body in the opening scene. But Jason has a new ability, and that seems to be a form of possession by transferring his essence from one person to the next. Now, in each form he took, Jason just seemed to be a straightforward silent attacker. Honestly, doesn't seem that well disguised. That's until he gets into Randy's body, where he's able to pretend that he's Randy and even speak as Randy. But he never used that ability up until the very end. But now we're used to Jason's appearance changing from film to film, so no big shock there. I'm not a big fan of his appearance in this movie, but it is what it is. As I stated at the beginning, I'm not a big fan of the fact that he was making some weird noises at the beginning. And it still doesn't make sense to me that after Jason's reborn, he comes back in the exact same form that he was when he died, making it seem like the mask and the clothes he's wearing are part of his very essence. I guess we should count ourselves lucky, as nobody wanted to see a naked Jason bursting through the floor. And for the first time in the series, they try to introduce someone else to the Voorhees bloodline other than Pamela and Jason Voorhees. Reference Jason's father, and the fact that he has a half-sister, and now a niece and a great-niece. This whole concept that he can be reborn through the blood of a Voorhees woman just doesn't make sense. It's way too out of left field and just a weird additive to this movie. And we have Creighton Duke. Where did he acquire this knowledge about Jason Voorhees? Did he know all these secrets of the Voorhees family? And where did he get this mythical dagger that can destroy Jason and send him to hell? We get none of these answers in this movie. But Jason's always had a supernatural side to him. He drowned as a child in 1957 and then came back after his mother was killed in the first movie. For the next several movies, he's just portrayed as a disfigured man, killing anybody he can around the Crystal Lake area until he's able to be stopped. And for the next several movies, he's brought back and basically portrayed as a walking corpse. This movie portrays him, however, as almost a demonic entity. And for me, the other movies just did a better job with keeping things vague and unexplained, rather than doing what this movie did by trying to add more to the lore but doing it poorly. This movie gives answers to questions that have never been asked, and then all it does is lead to more questions that'll never be answered. I also don't like that Jason has received a lot of notoriety in this movie, that he's like a national news story. I mean, as many killings as he did in previous movies, it would lead to a national news story, but all the other movies always kept it local, and Jason was a local legend, which I think worked much better. I do like the Freddy tease to close things, and that does lead to an awesome movie, but sadly it takes a long time to get there. There are an impressive 23 kills in this movie. Jason being blown up at the beginning I don't count as a kill, as we know he didn't die. Once he takes possession of Coroner Phil, he kills the other coroner, 2 FBI agents, reportedly kills 5 others on his way to Crystal Lake. I don't put them in the count because we don't ever see them. At Crystal Lake, he kills the 3 teenagers in the woods, Alexis, Deborah, Luke. He later kills Edna, and then takes possession of Deputy Josh, discarding Coroner Phil, killing him. As Deputy Josh, he kills Diana, and Deputy Josh is killed when he transfers to Robert. As Robert, he kills 3 police officers, then he kills Ward. A diner patron was almost killed by Jason, but was actually killed by Vicky when she was shooting Jason with a shotgun. He got caught in the crossfire. He then killed Shelby, Joey, and Vicky. Then transfers again out of Robert's body, killing him, and takes possession of Randy. Sheriff Ed was killed, accidentally being stabbed by Jessica. Jason doesn't get any kills in the form of Randy, but Randy dies when he's attacked by Steven and Jason leaves his body. Jason returns to his own body, he kills Creighton Duke, and then at the end Jason himself is killed by Jessica, and then is dragged to hell by demonic hands. This movie makes me miss the Jason of the 80s. On Rotten Tomatoes, this movie got a 15% score from critics and a 24% audience score. Over on IMDb, it gets an audience score of 4.1 out of 10. This movie tried to be different but doesn't deliver. For me, I score this at a 4.5 out of 10. Let me know your thoughts on Jason Goes to Hell: A Final Friday in the comment section. Please be sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel, and please keep an eye out for my next video coming soon, which will be Jason X.